Meet Reid Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reid is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reid.
Howdy, listeners from coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada, and around the globe. On the Right Side Radio, Reid Lance Rosenthal talking at you. So today we're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff. Number one, my final decision on whether to continue broadcasting on the AM stations or not, and the reasons for that decision. Number two, a little bit more update on Trump assassination attempt 2 and 1, shall I say conspiracy rather than attempt. And that'll bring you up to speed. Remember, on the rightsideradio.com is your wealth of information on all sorts of topics, including that. Homepage, upper right-hand corner, those are all the major links that lead you to other pages with huge amounts of information, whether it's the Trump assassination conspiracies, COVID, Ukraine, election fraud, you name it. That'll bring you really up to speed. And we're going to be talking about what you need to do with the election, give or take 6 weeks out. I mean, this is the 9th inning, to ensure that America survives, right? Along with your stability, both financial and property and personal. And we're going to be talking, we're going to do some rat-a-tat-tat. That'll have some latest economic stuff in there for you. Remember last week, I warned you that this hoopla over the Federal Reserve cut was exactly that, hoopla. While the markets may move temporarily, the underlying problems are being accentuated, not dissipated. And we're going to be talking about the ranch story, which I think is important today, and of course the founder's quote. And I'm going to have a whole checklist for you on what you can do very easily, I mean with minimum effort, to ensure that America survives, i.e. that we carry the House, hopefully carry the Senate, and win the presidency. Even though, as we're going to discuss today, because I'm going to give you my prognostications, just in a general sense, on what will be happening, no matter what, whether Kamala Harris gets the nod for reasons we'll get into, or Trump gets the nod. Certain things are inevitable in any case, and they will affect you and your family and your property and your pocketbook and America and your freedoms. So without further ado, why don't we do the founder's quote, shall we? And this, I think, is perfect for today's show and perfect overall. This is Thomas Jefferson. If we are to guard against ignorance and remain free, it is the responsibility of every American to be informed, unquote. Amen. And that's what I have tried to do and what I am trying to do here on this broadcast to you, whether it is the visual broadcast, the video broadcasts on Rumble and YouTube, GagMe, Google, Brighteon, Gab, True Social, X, wherever, where you can get us about anywhere, or on the AM radio shows for the past, give or take, 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, in fact. So, the ranch story, which I think will also tie into today's show. So the other day, I had the occasion, which I very infrequently get. I mean, it's probably been, a couple years since I had the occasion to do like a complete every nook and cranny, if that's possible, on a place like this, tour of two of our ranches, including the headquarters ranch. And the occasion was precipitated by my giving a tour to some folks, which I don't normally do. But, you know, in the course of that bopping around on ATVs and mostly a Rhino, we got to discuss lots of things about ranching and water and irrigation and resource, just plain pretties, topography, and all sorts of other matters. And they were highly impressed with what they saw, and highly impressed with the irrigation systems, and highly impressed with, virtually every aspect, maybe every aspect of what we toured together. And you know, so was I. And I realized that this place is an exceptionally beautiful place. And it ought to be enjoyed. And the message here for everybody is that, shall we say, and excuse me for the phone, impossible to stop up here. Let me just say that everybody needs to enjoy what they have. You know, all of us fall into the trap at one time or another in our lives. Some of us can't ever escape it, of coveting somebody else's stuff. Your stuff is never big enough. It's never beautiful enough. It's never nice enough. It's not the same color as Sally's house. It doesn't have the bedrooms that John's house does, or whatever anomaly that you want to use in comparing what you have to what others have. So my take from all this, after having treated myself, to be honest with you, to a full tour, as much as you can make a full tour in 7 hours of this place, was that it is impressive. It is beautiful. It is exceptional. And yeah, there's bigger ranches. There's probably nicer ranches. You know, they may have more mountain, or they may have more river, or they may have a bigger river, or whatever. But you know what? This place is grand. Just like your place and what you have is grand. And we all ought to take time, I think, to enjoy it and recognize it and be proud of ourselves for whatever our particular, shall we say, heartthrob asset happens to be. Because, you know, the only thing you can't get back is time. And every minute you lose thinking about what somebody else has, or what you don't have, or what in your dreams you'd like to have, is time you don't spend enjoying what you do have. And time is finite. And the more involved you get with your own stuff, and the more you appreciate it, the more you are likely to fight to protect it. And that may be apropos in the coming years. So, those are my thoughts. You can take them or leave them, but I think they're true. Now, let's talk a little bit about what my final decision was on radio broadcasting on AM stations around the country. First of all, let me tell you, thank you to the many millions who have listened to me. Number two, let me tell you, I love y'all. I love this country. I love you for being Americans. I love you for trying to be informed, i.e., the founder's quote today. And I love you for supporting the Constitution and freedom and doing what you can, which I hope you have, to make sure that it flourishes and doesn't die. But after reading all the correspondence I got from various listeners, and thank you to all of you who wrote me, I came to the conclusion that there are a load of people who listen to me just on podcast. By the way, very easy to find. There's loads and increasing loads of people who are listening to our new video series on all the various channels, and the links, by the way, just click on the link, particularly Rumble, I kind of like, on the homepage on therightsideradio.com. And given the growth in those mediums, podcast and video, the visual of me yakking at you and moving my lips, I think that's the way I'm going to go. And I got several comments about, well, you can't just stop broadcasting like right before the election. And comments along those lines, along with the comments of saying, I don't listen to you on the radio. I listen only on podcasts, or I only watch the videos. But in the end, for personal considerations relative to time, which we've discussed, the AM radio is 10x the time to put together as is the videos and the podcasts, which are really one and the same, one without my ugly face and one with. And I don't have that time. I have other responsibilities, particularly getting books 5 and 6 out, which people are really, should we say, impatient. Use a kind word. Impatient, stressful flattery for me. But those books need to come out. They are way late. I apologize to all of you who are listening, who are readers. I think you will find the wait well worthwhile, and you will find that, just like in book 4, Moccasin Track, the first 50 pages kind of brings you up to speed on the entire story. And by the way, you folks who haven't read these books, you should. I'm biased, of course. But don't go to book 4 now that you know there's a synopsis in the first 50 pages of the previous 3 books. You will spoil the whole story for you, and you will spoil lots of surprises that you will enjoy if you do not succumb to that, shall we say, carrot that's dangling out there that you now know of. But all the rest of the books will have that same 50 plus or minus page synopsis, map, etc., that'll bring you up to speed in this big story of us up to page 1 of the new book that you have embarked on turning the pages of. So when I put all those equations together and I add in the ranch work that has to be done and a new lieutenant up here on the ranch who is doing great, but obviously, can't learn all the ropes by himself overnight. That is my decision. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Yes, the AM broadcast will stop. This is the very last one of On the Right Side Radio on AM, at least for now. But on the other hand, the On the Right Side Radio broadcasts on podcast and video will continue and increase. In fact, this latitude, since I don't have to spend the time on AM trying to get everything into 14-minute, 43-second slots, which takes forever and lots of editing by everybody involved, will allow me to do maybe 2 videos, shorter videos each week, and stay in more constant contact with you without a week elapsing. That's my plan. So that's my decision. Once again, thank you for the input. Thank you. I know many of you listeners have listened to me since I was first on the air on mighty KGAB 650 AM Cheyenne many, many, many years ago, and many of you on other stations around the country. I love you. Let's make it happen, shall we? All right. Let's talk about, shall we say, a call to action. We're 6 weeks out from this election. But the best thing I can do on this final AM broadcast is to remind you of what you need to do. These are simple things. Number 1, contribute to the campaigns, causes, and candidates of your choice. There are many, many races out there. The House of Representatives, which controls the purse strings, and the Senate, which controls the judiciary, which is about the only thing that's saved our butt for the last 4 years of Obama's third term, and treaties with the looming pandemic nonsense at the WHO and the looming small arms treaty at the UN, and I can go on. I mean, they're all horrible. Under any of them, we surrender our sovereignty. We become part of the lovely world order. And America was not meant to do that. America was meant to lead. America is exceptional. no matter how much they tear it down. So all of these things are important. And the president, because of executive orders, because he sets the tone for the entire administration, and because one of these candidates will do nothing but grow government and deficit, and the other, while deficit will definitely grow, will reduce government. The enemy of the people is that portion of the government which is the entrenched bureaucracy, also known as the deep state. And we need somebody in there and the support of a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate to make sure that it gets dismantled. Otherwise, we're toast. If not in the near future, then eventually. And when I say we are toast, I mean our liberties, our freedom, our Constitution, our judiciary, the rule of law, which obviously is under attack horrendously right now, our private property, our taxes, our pocketbooks, our personal safety and security is going to be sacrificed. If not diminished, maybe extinguished. And it's up to us. There's no one else. So the first thing you can do is contribute. Even if it's $10, we have a new page up today, and that is suggested election contributions. Once again, link will be in the upper right hand corner along with the other important links on ontherightsideradio.com. We have a number, not a huge number, but a number of candidates who are great, and they are in very close races. Sihi up in Montana, Havdi, and if I mispronounce his name, excuse me, in Wisconsin, and several others. They need your support. This is crunch time now. This is when they're doing their ad buying for the lead into the election. This is when they're hiring their on-the-ground staff to knock on doors in the day or so before and during election day. This is really critical, guys. I mean, this is a small investment to save a huge loss later. I mean, if you think that sending $10 to 10 guys or $20 or whatever, particularly with the multiples, some of them 2x, up to 10x right now that we're posting for you, is expensive, well, if we don't carry at least one of the chambers, and preferably both, and the presidency, that expense will be about of the same importance as a soda pop somewhere in a convenience store. That's how trivial it is in the big picture. Get involved with your wallet. It makes a difference. Secondly, make sure you are registered to vote, and make sure at least 10 of your friends are registered to vote, and make sure that 10 of each of their friends is registered to vote, and so on and so forth. And the same thing with actually voting. Make sure you vote. Make sure 10 of your friends and 10 of their friends and 10 of their friends vote. And to the extent possible, I can't emphasize this, I've been talking about it, vote early. It's a pleasure, actually. Uncrowded, take your time, nobody down there. It's terrific. And absentee ballots, I recommend against USPS if you can avoid it. Better to hand deliver, or where legal, have it hand delivered for you, right to the clerk. Because they're having games played at the USPS, and as I told you last week, they endorsed Kamala Harris, their union, which I think should send you a message. This is critical. Avoid what I'm certain is going to be some type of chaos in many places on Election Day, and some type of gamesmanship by the Democrats and their bureaucratic supporters in various locations. Secondly, or thirdly, should I say, volunteer. This is not a lot of time. Volunteer through the local Republican committee, or volunteer directly to a campaign, or volunteer to a cause such as Charlie Kirk's First America, whatever it is. Just look up Charlie Kirk, it'll come right up. He's doing a super job of organizing the ground crew. And go out and knock on doors. or be a poll watcher. There's going to be lots of fraud in this election. The more eyes and ears on it, the less there will be, or the more that will be caught to be contested later. And then the last thing is make sure that you pass on information, i.e. the founder's quote today, because you're getting censored all over the place. Again, check your spam file. You'll see what I mean. Google plays all sorts of games with this show, both radio, by the way, AM radio, podcast, video. I mean, all they do is screw with the algorithms, screw with your rankings when you search for the show, and take down shows, all sorts of things. And YouTube, so that you know, is Google. There you go. Okay. Instagram, by the way, is Facebook. Okay. Enough said. My audience, particularly if you've been listening to me for any length of time, is aware of all these things. Employ that knowledge. Once again, it's back to information. You were brought the information. Think about it. Do something about it. Do something with it. All right. Why don't we get into the latest and greatest, wow, on the reveals, as sparse as they are, from the FBI, the three-letter agencies, and the Secret Service. And then we'll get into rat-a-tat-tat and some economics. And then I'm going to close this last AM radio broadcast, and off we will go, hopefully, to a brighter future. Okay, I'll tell you what, rather than going to rat-a-tat-tat, let's go over my prognostications for the election and what the outcome is, not on a political basis. I think we all kind of got that, maybe just except for a few points, but on a social, societal, foundational level for the United States. Then we'll get into rat-a-tat-tat, economics, the Trump deal, etc. So, look, we have the votes, but they have the ballots. Remember, the history of election fraud, stories I brought you on the rightsideradio.com, the archives. The Democrats are concerned with ballots. They don't care about voters. They can create ballots. They can't create voters. So a lot of this is going to come down to psyops, right? There's a little deal in the rat-a-tat-tat upcoming. There's an article on the website under psyops and under rat-a-tat-tat on how to recognize like an AI deal rather than a real deal. And I think you ought to get with that program because there's a lot of nonsense floating around the internet. By the way, a little bit on both sides, a lot on the Democratic side. And it's going to come down to how well we control fraud and how well the lawfare, which has been raging for a year and is raging right now on various election laws and voter integrity laws around the country, in the end, wind up. And it's going to depend on each of us doing kind of the call to action I gave you a few minutes ago. So, whatever the outcome, it's important that Congress, both the House and the Senate, or at least one of them, fall into conservative constitutional hands. Otherwise, we have an A#1 wreck on top of the A#1 wreck we already have. If Trump wins, you're going to see a whole bunch more lawfare. You're going to see a bunch of nonsense like the Russia collusion type deal. You're going to see probably more indictments of him, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be chaos. You're going to see a lot of the left, Antifa and the rest, in the streets, particularly in the major cities. And when I say the major cities, most of the major blue cities and blue states, but you'll find them in red states too, particularly in blue cities in red states. And it's going to be dangerous. And property is going to be lost. And unfortunately, I think lives will be lost. Hopefully that won't be the case. In addition, they're going to do everything they can bureaucratically within the deep state to slow down whatever he does. I mean, any executive order is going to be challenged in court. It's going to be chaos. I don't think they'll be able to stop him, though, maybe slow him down on deportation, getting the wall built, shutting the border, toning down the intentional ramp up of the world situation and potential World War III, and some of his other policies that he wants to do. But it's going to be bedlam, folks. If you think his first election in the year afterwards was bedlam, just multiply it 3x, hold on to your saddle, cinch it up. Now, if Kamala Harris is elected, which is possible, then she's going to be going after her left-wing bias from day one. Expect the border to be ramped back open despite all her rhetoric to the opposite right now. You know, think about her actions the last 3 years, not her nonsense now. She's going to renege on her whole charade for this election immediately and couch it in all sorts of terms and blame all sorts of people and whatever. And she is going to increase giveaways, which is going to increase the deficit, which is going to, again, rock the foundation of the United States economy and its fiscal integrity and the integrity of the dollar, which, by the way, they want to bring down. I mean, remember, this will be Barry's fourth term. And his economic advisors, I've told you several times, Bernstein in 2014 and just this year, said it's time for King Dollar to be dethroned, right? America needs to be just another seat at the table of nations, folks. Nothing exceptional about us. In fact, we're horrible racists and imperialists. Yes, and we need to be punished. And the wealth needs to be redistributed, particularly to Democratic voters. And I think you're going to see really a deteriorating condition in economic, fiscal, and overall instability. You're obviously going to see an attack on the Supreme Court. That's going to be like day one, trying to pack it, trying to change the justices. Who knows? Impeachments for the justices if we don't carry the House and the Senate, or at least one of them, particularly the Senate. And here we go. And you're going to see more and more globalist policies, the WHO Pandemic Treaty, the UN Small Arms Treaty, the Agenda 2030 Treaty, UN Treaty. I can go on down the list. It's breathtaking and it's horrifying. And you may see a renewed push toward a digital dollar and a clamp down on any other kind of digital forms of quote unquote money, whatever you happen to believe. I'm not giving you any opinion, like Bitcoin, because they want total control. Bitcoin is outside that realm. So just be thinking about it. You're going to see a bunch of other things too. You'll see an attack on the Second Amendment like you've never seen before. And, she's promised her mandatory confiscatory buyback of weapons, kind of like Australia. And I think Canada had a limited similar deal. By the way, if I'm brushing at my neck once in a while, we're in the attack of the annual elder bug attack up here on the ranch. They just swarm out of the trees. Sprayers are coming shortly, so the vacuuming, which is incessant, can stop. I'm kind of off my point here, but you get the message. It's going to be bedlam no matter who gets elected. Either the left blockage and games or and in the street if Trump wins, or the right if Trump loses, doing their thing, whatever that happens to be. All right, let's do a real quick rat-a-tat-tat. Remember, all these articles, and they always will be, are on the website. Rat-a-tat-tat, appropriate, treason, under the audio bar if particularly important, back in one of the key additional informational pages, COVID litigation, the Trump assassination conspiracy, and election fraud, and etc. So read them. I'm just giving you broad brushes to tell you what's there for you to really investigate. Remember Thomas Jefferson's quote, be informed. Make sure others are informed. So the National Police Association, just to give you an idea of the types of games that I was just talking about leading up to the election. And we'll be talking about the lawfare that's going on right now. It's breathtaking. So the National Police Association, ever heard of it? Neither did anybody else. In fact, it just came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. the only police association in the United States to do so. Well, when you check a little further, their website's pretty much blank. They don't boast any membership, and they were formed in June of this year. That's 2 months ago. I'll let you put two and two together there. In the Epic Times, there's an article, I was just talking about it, Fake Images and How to Spot Them. I have that posted under PSYOPs, rat-a-tat-tat, election fraud, the whole 9 yards. Important. Read it. Pass it on. The WHO has just declared a international public health emergency, the highest level of readiness. The world is we're all about to drop over, folks. This is based on 14,000 cases of monkeypox in Africa, which, by the way, has now been proven to have been genetically engineered. Gee, who would have thought? And 524 deaths. Okay, so they're ramping up for the WHO pandemic treaty, right? In case Kamala Harris gets in. That article is posted also. By the way, the last time they did something like that was many, many, many years ago, except, COVID. That's right, COVID. And then, so there is a huge hue and cry, in fact, from both the Senate and the House right now, to shut down Communist Chinese purchase of American land, particularly farmland, and particularly near military installations. Guess who just nixed that? That's right, Kamala Harris and Biden, i.e. Obama third term. Those paychecks that the CCP were sending he and Hunter, they're paying off big time for China, aren't they? Federal Appeals Court, they rule in favor, this is great, of a hospital employee who was fired for refusing to take the jab. In other words, honor the hospital jab mandate. This is a big deal. This is a really big deal. And many of you have claims and you need to bring them. Unless you hold people accountable, this will continue and accelerate, folks. Bring those claims. That article is posted on the COVID litigation page, tab, upper right-hand corner, homepage on the rightsideradio.com. And then Trump has just proposed, I got to think about it, but it sounds kind of cool on the surface, a reduction in tax rates from 23%, they were 39% when he took office, to 15% for any company in which products are made completely in America. That's kind of proactive, bringing it all back to America. He's also proposed no taxes on tips, Social Security, overtime, and additional child tax credits, by the way. That article also is on the website. On election fraud and election cases. Number one, I have posted for you, hold on a second here, let me get straight. All right. I have posted for you on the website in various locations and under election fraud and on the election fraud page, that tab, a complete listing of lawsuits that are going on of any major significance relative to voter integrity, election integrity, proper voting ID, etc. There's a pile of them. In big news, just this week, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned a lower court decision. The lower court, and I had brought you this, the lower court ruled that, if you get in an absentee ballot and it has the wrong date or whatever on it, you still have to count it. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court overruled that. Wrong date, anything wrong with the ballot, you don't have to count it. Yay for that win. But there's plenty of others going on where we're not faring that well or the outcome is in doubt. In Georgia, the election board, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats, have ruled that reasonable inquiry into a suspect ballot is allowed by the folks who run the polls in the various counties. The ACLU is incensed because, who wants to verify the veracity of a ballot, like, whether it was cast by a legal voter, or somebody who lives in the area, or somebody who's not dead, or somebody who's not from, Guatemala. Who would want to do that? We need to save democracy, says the ACLU, or something like that. Okay, whatever. Texas has demanded that the feds supply citizenship docs a listing of citizens so that they can clean their voter rolls. I don't have to tell you, do I, that the feds are resisting and ignoring that request. Gee, what are they hiding? Who would think? All right, on the Trump assassination conspiracies, not much to report because, it's all quiet on the conspiracy front, folks. But the Secret Service has done a private briefing with Congress, and I guess it was unbelievable. Richard Blumenthal, who I don't like at all, he's a Democratic shill, left-winger from Connecticut. But even he said, and I quote, "The American people will be shocked, astonished, and appalled at what we report about by the way, about both the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security, our friend and traitor, Mr. Mayorkas." That report comes out next week. We'll have it posted on the website for you. I will be talking about it in the videos series, which are continuing, and the podcasts. And then we have the Secret Service being sued by America First Legal, rockin' outfit, Judicial Watch, American First Legal. I mean, two primary outfits looking out for our interests, for withholding, the Secret Service withholding critical documents, like, who are the names of the agents? Who would want to know that the day of a assassination conspiracy attempt? I mean, why should we know that? Nope. So the Secret Service has been sued because they refuse to give the documents, even though proper requests, FOIA, et cetera, and expedited, which the rules allowed, were made. Who would have known? There's more whistleblowers coming in and reporting all sorts of nastiness, purposeful nastiness, like, shall we say, conspiracy nastiness at Department of Homeland Security, our friend Mayorkas, and at the Secret Service. There'll be more on that next week. I'll be bringing it to you. And then we have Venezuela. Let's go back to election fraud for just a moment. See if this sounds familiar to you. I mean, we all know what an SREC Venezuela is. We all know about the crime they have imported to the United States with Kamala Harris's and Biden's help. We know about the apartments they've taken over in Denver. We know about the gangs roaming in Chicago, and I'm not going to bore you with all that. You got that. But down in Venezuela, where all observers, including the United States government, think that the opposition leader, his name is, Edmundo Gonzalez, handily won the election with somewhere between 60 and 80% of the vote. The government under Maduro, a left-wing despot, if there ever was one, refuses to give up the tally sheets. Well, Gonzalez's people got hold of some of the tally sheets. And guess what? The huge majority, we're talking about over 90%, show that all the votes were 60 to 80%, exactly what everybody thought, for Gonzalez and not for Maduro. So a little bit of election fraud, by the way, with the help of election machines. Who would have thought? Paper ballots, folks, paper ballots. If we get control of Congress and these state houses, remember the call to action. And it gets better. See if this resembles any country you know right now. So Gonzalez has been granted asylum in Spain because he learned that a rigged Maduro court had ordered his arrest for treason and for falsifying documents and et cetera, et cetera. Let's see, where else was an opposition leader arrested and had criminal trials? I don't remember the name. Oh, that's right, the United States of America. It took me a moment for it all to register. So there you go. And to finish up with economic rat-a-tat-tat, real quick for you, all the articles, once again, on the website. See if I can do this without knocking stuff over. Big paws, little pieces of paper. Global money supply. This is, by the way, is according to Daniel Lacalle. He's an economics professor, the Mises Institute analyst, and has a Substack, which is very good. And it's off a John Rubino article, also on Substack, which is very good. I may in the future be doing short Substack articles. I'll get that word out to you in any way I can, and you'll be invited to subscribe. I think I'm going to make it like $1 a month, and there'll be 2 articles a week with all sorts of stuff in them. But you'll know when that happens. Sometime, I hope, in the next 2 to 4 weeks. We shall see. So anyway, Daniel, who's a very good economist, has put together some stats. The problem is not just America, although we're leading the way. Global money supply has soared 20.6 trillion since 2019. Global debt has surged 15 trillion in 2023 alone. So it's now at a new high for the planet Earth of $313 trillion. That's direct debt, by the way. That's not like unfunded liabilities of all these countries. 55% of this total rise, think about the Western world now and what's happening to it, is from the US, France, and Germany. Unfunded liabilities in the United States now amount to a minimum of $72 trillion, that's trillion, dollars. And that doesn't count all of it, I might add. And that's almost 300% of GDP. Remember my show last week? If you didn't see it, okay? Listen to it in the archives. And Spain, if you think we're bad and we're horrible, we're not the worst. Spain is at 500% of GDP for unfunded liabilities. France, 400%. Germany, 350%. What do they all have in common? Oh, that's right. They're socialist countries. Take from the rich and give to the poor, the Robin Hood of Marxism and the death knell of capitalism and freedom, I might add. When you have those kind of things going, folks, the end is, shall we say, inevitable, shall we? And to add angst to that, this is to inform you, not to make you nervous. In 2024, there were 70 elections so far. Not a single government, not a single party running for government, not a single one, even bothered to present a realistic plan to cut debt. Not one. What does that tell you about where we're headed? And the United States Treasury expects a 16 trillion, and we all know they're way low, increase in public debt between 2024 and 2034, which would put us at about 51 trillion in primary U.S. national debt. Doesn't take into account the unfunded liabilities. And it doesn't take into account any recession risk because, you know, the world's great and we're not going to have any recession ever again. And if we do, it'll be the softest landing. It won't even wake you up. So don't you worry your pretty little head about it. All right. Last little economic rat-a-tat-tat. The workers at Boeing were going to go on strike. And they wanted a 40% pay increase. Well, they were unsuccessful. They only got a 25% pay increase over, I believe, 3 years. Let's see. They build what? Oh, that's right. Airplanes. So I guess air costs go up. And they build all sorts of defense stuff. So I guess government costs will go up, which means the deficit will go up. And we can go on and on and on, can't we? And of course, inflation has been licked. So don't you worry, because we're all A-OK. It's just wine and roses from here. Okay, folks, how should we spend the last 8 minutes or so of the last AM broadcast of On the Right Side Radio? Although I will be continuing. I keep telling you this. Podcast, on the video channels. The links are on therightsideradio.com on the homepage. And I might add, you can just go to these various channels, Rumble, Gab, X, etc., and put in Reid Lance Rosenthal, The Cowboy's Take, or The Cowboy's Take, or Reid Lance Rosenthal, and it should pop up if you're not using the links on the website that are provided, which are pretty easy. I think why don't we spend it on international news? Because, that's so rosy. Give you a good uplift here. Uh-huh. So U.S. diplomacy is faltering down there in the Middle East. Well, U.S. diplomacy has been faltering for about the last 4 years, looking at what's going on around the globe. But the latest initiative by Biden and Blinken and the other buttheads there in the administration is falling apart. They can't seem to reach any kind of peace agreement, even a standstill agreement in Gaza between Hamas and Israel, and in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. And the Houthis over there in Yemen, never mind the fact they've been pounded by the British, pounded by the Americans, they just continue firing rockets at will at shipping in the Red Sea and in the Straits. Lovely situation. And it's only a question of time, in my opinion, that Israel will do some kind of ground incursion or full invasion of the Lebanon area, where they have been pounding the smithereens out of Hezbollah there with artillery, rockets, planes, you name it. I mean, basically they're doing to certain parts of Lebanon what was done to most, if not all, of Gaza. So this is a time bomb waiting to erupt. Iran is sitting there like a caged tiger, restrained, I think, by China, because China's not ready for war just yet. No, not just yet. In fact, a Chinese nuclear submarine, their newest one, sank, according to our Defense Department. So the Chinese military has some problems, and welcome to the club, China, because the U.S. military has all sorts of problems. Like planes falling out of the sky and they can't be found. They're only $30-40 million each, no problem. Anyway, you watch the Mideast, folks, because if that blows, or should I say when it blows, if it blows big, it's going to affect everything, from the price of oil, which will affect like every other index commodity and goods and services that you buy, to stability stretching all the way around the globe. It will affect the war in Ukraine. It'll affect the unrest in Africa. It'll affect the enmity between India and China. This is a huge deal. Watch it very carefully and know that you're not getting the news, either all the news, the right news, or the true news from mainstream media, because that would not make Obama's third term look very good going into an election. I will suggest for you that there's several great sites. Canadian Prepper on YouTube. Now, he's a little bit melodramatic. He's trying to sell you prepper stuff, etc. But he really has, and he has maps and he has backgrounds. He really has some of the best compendium, even though it's a bit dark and he's a bit gloomy. He has the best compendium of international news, really, of almost anybody I've seen. That's a pretty big compliment. So that's one place you can follow international news, at least of some sorts and varieties, without the, should we say, filter. I'll be really nice. The filter of mainstream media and Google and the rest of the clowns who believe in censorship and keeping you stupid, contrary to the quote of Thomas Jefferson at the beginning of this show today. And then over in Taiwan, the Chinese military looks like they're practicing to do a blockade of Taiwan, and more incursions, like, by the week, into Taiwan airspace, testing Taiwan's defenses. Now, once again, I don't think China's ready. I think they're just kind of flexing their muscles and they're trying to keep the U.S. off balance. Remember that the adversaries of the U.S., which are many, yes, they are, would love to have the U.S. spread out over the globe, just like they are, but in hot wars, so that it really drains our resources. Remember that all wars are economic in the end. In essence, they are much more about money and economy and ability in terms of economy than they are about how many soldiers you have and how many tanks and how many bullets, although that is part of the equation, because if you're broke, you can't buy all those goodies to wage war with, can you? Then over there in Ukraine, what a debacle. completely avoidable, just like, I might add, the Israeli situation is. The Israeli situation today is born of the policies of many of the U.S. presidents prior to this. Not all, but they have exacerbated the situation. They have held Israel back until they're at a point where they have to like level Gaza. When if it had been done incrementally and when it occurred and they hadn't been restrained, could have been, the temper of this could have been kept much lower. And it also to the UN and to the US, who played a major role. When Israel was formed in 1948, how did they even think, knowing the Arabic enmity toward Israel, that Israel could possibly survive or not be attacked when it was this tiny little island surrounded by huge land masses and folks who hated it? Obviously, it was going to be attacked. It was too small to defend. So that's one of the reasons for the land grabs by the Israelis. You can't blame them. It's in their national defense and in defense of their people. Never mind what you may think of how they are doing it. I understand why they're doing it. And Zelensky, our buddy Zelensky, what does he want? Oh, he wants more money. What a huge surprise. Maybe he can go out and buy his 6th palatial estate in his 6th getaway country. What do you think? And what he also wants, which he's calling a peace initiative, by the way, gag me, is he wants, in addition to more money, he wants more powerful weapons, more longer range missiles. I mean, he has missiles now that we've given him by we, NATO, the US, that have 1,000, 1,200 kilometer range. That's pretty long range, okay? If you're launching them from Ukraine, you're well inside Russia's sovereign territory. And the Russians aren't too happy. So they have, once again, several times over the last 6 months, they're sending a message, change their nuclear doctrine. Just this week, it was announced that the nuclear doctrine is now, if you attack our cities with a host of or swarm of drones or missiles, in other words, conventional weapons, then we can use nuclear weapons, which, per my previous shows, you know they are primed to do, locked and loaded, in everywhere around that area. So we will hope that China can keep them in check, just like China has kept so far Iran in check. But at some point, China will say, go get them, boys. Or the boys will say, hey, Xi Ji, we are just not going to listen to you anymore. We need to do what we need to do. And China really won't do a lot because these countries are the source of China's energy. Speaking of China, China is in dire economic straits. It really is. In fact, every indicator is down. Their manufacturing is down. Their exports is down. Their unemployment is up. Profits are steady to down on the industrial side, profits being a misnomer in a communist state, but nonetheless, the measurement. And they're so bad that they have just entered, in fact, just in the last few days, I think it was last Friday, they just started some pretty significant economic stimulus, like devaluing their currency type moves, just like the United States has been doing. They've been watching us, I guess. They lowered the reserve requirements for their banks by 10%. This is in effect boosting their entire money supply by 10%. That means banks can loan more and easier to more folks and companies. So we'll keep an eye on that because China is the second largest, if not on a par with the United States, economy in the world. And we kind of know what's coming in the United States. And if you have both the largest economies in the world kind of wobbly, shall we say, at the same time, it's going to be a very unhappy planet with a lot of unhappy people, which creates lots of social unrest. All right. NATO is in full mobilization, folks. I mean, we're talking about almost 500,000 troops starting to run around. Russia is in full mobilization. They announced that they're going to raise the quantity of their army, who knows about the quality, to 2.2 million men. That's a lot of soldiers, that's a lot of soldiers. And so everybody is ramping up over there in Ukraine while everybody else is distracted by the election, by the Mideast, by China and Taiwan, etc. But in effect, all these things are interwoven. And all these things, whether they're popping or they're not popping or they're just simmering, are part of a grand strategy by one side or the other. And all it takes is one mistake to make that grand strategy a grand disaster. My last little international tidbit. The head of the Haiti transition government, they've been in transition for 40 years down there while they milk it dry of American and other planetary aid. The honcho, his name is Edgard Netanyahu. I wonder if he's a cousin to Netanyahu over there in Israel. Just a joke. He has pledged in front of the UN just a day or so ago Haiti's solidarity with all those poor Haitian illegal immigrants in Springfield, Missouri, that are terrorizing the town, that have turned the entire county upside down, that are finding tasty treats in the form of the residents' pets, etc., and are a, shall we say, warning sign and signal, a really bad one, of what we can expect if this illegal immigration is not checked, and the folks who got here illegally are, for the most part, deported back to where they came from, which, under a Kamala Harris presidency or a democratically controlled Congress, will not happen. It will be just the opposite, because in the end, folks, they don't give a hoot about you and I. And they don't even give a hoot about those that support them. They are just, their supporters to them are what Lenin's supporters were to him. And his word for his supporters were useful idiots. So that's it. Okay. This is the last AM radio show, as I told you. Once again, I love all you AM radio listeners who have listened to me faithfully for many years, millions of you. Please go to the website to continue to be updated on information, pass it out. Please go to the podcast. You can get them anywhere and everywhere. In fact, you can listen to the show right on the website. Just punch the play button on the audio bar. Or go to, if you want to see my ugly maw, Rumble, Gab, Truth Social, X. I mean, we're all over the place. And if you must, YouTube. And please throw a like and throw a subscribe so you know when they come out, because I'm going to up the pace of them and shorten the duration of them to be more contemporaneous with this tsunami of news, which is coming our way, which is about to become a double X, a 2X tsunami as this election approaches, and then in its aftermath, as we discussed a few minutes ago. I want to wish America the best, and all you Americans the best. It's up to us. Let's stand up, shall we? Take action. Keep the wind at your back. We'll talk to you on podcast and video from here on in.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reid Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.